Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and this time we've got the pleasure of watching Tankart playing in the Tier 10 Swedish auto-loading heavy tank, the Kranvagn. Now I know I featured the STRV-103B a lot on this channel, obviously because it's got the fantastic new siege mechanic in World of Tanks, which is so novel and so exciting, and so it's very easy to forget that there was two branches of Swedish tanks that went into the game, and now we're going to be looking at the top tier Swedish heavy tank, and Tankart is going to show you exactly what this vehicle is all about. Now if you have no idea what this vehicle is and what it is good for, let me compare it to the other auto-loading heavy tanks in the game, the American T57 Heavy and also the French AMX-50B. So the Kranvagn certainly doesn't have the best gun. In fact, it's got less penetration than the AMX-50B and the T57 Heavy on its standard rounds, and significantly less penetration on its premium rounds. We're talking about 40mm less penetration on its heat rounds than the T57 Heavy, and the vehicle gets less penetration on its heat rounds even though the AMX-50B fires APCR. And also, the reload is much longer on the Kranvagn, as you're going to see here. Tankart is going to have to spend quite a while reloading after he just puts a full round of a full magazine of 120mm shells into that IS-7, dealing 1,583 damage, which is suddenly something to not be sniffed at. The reload is 33 seconds for a full magazine. When we compare this to the T57 Heavy, who he's going to be shooting at now, who has 25 seconds reload, that certainly is a lot longer, and that means that the DPM of this tank is a rather disappointing 2,285, which certainly doesn't sound very good for a tier 10 vehicle. That's less than the AMX-50B as well, which spends 30 seconds reloading. So the Kranvagn, so far you might be thinking, oh well, what's so special about it? The vehicle is also less accurate than both of those tanks, 0.36 compared to 0.35, and but the vehicle has much better aim time and dispersion than the T57 Heavy, which means it can get its shots out more accurately. But it's on par with the AMX-50B, with I think the vehicle having slightly worse dispersion when moving. But there's one thing that is a massive drawback on the Kranvagn, and that is how fast you can dispense your shells when they're loaded, i.e. the delay between each of the rounds in your magazine. On the T57 Heavy, it's an amazing 2 seconds flat, meaning you can fire off your entire magazine within 6 seconds. Wow, 6 seconds, that's crazy. I was thinking about the AMX-50B, which has 2.5 seconds delay between its shells, which is just absolutely crazy. But oh, did we just ricochet a griller off the turret there? Oh, that's a bit spoilers. I'll be talking about that in just a second. The Kranvagn takes a whole 3 seconds delay between each one of its shells, meaning it's going to take 9 seconds to fully fire off a magazine, which, you know what, it's just incredibly disappointing about this vehicle. But it is balanced out by the fact that this tank does have some incredible statistics. For one, it's faster than a T57 Heavy, but slower than an AMX-50B. But the main thing that you might be noticing as Tankart is working these ridge lines is that it has 12 degrees of gun depression. We're talking about the same kind of gun depression that you get on the Comet. To put that into perspective, most of the top tier medium tanks have either 9 degrees or 10 degrees of gun depression. The SDV-1 and the Centurion Action 10 degrees, the M48 and also the Leopard, I believe, having 9 degrees. This tank has 12. That's 2 degrees more than the recently buffed AMX-50B, which has 10 degrees, and 4 degrees more than the T57 Heavy. And so that means that you can just work ridgelines like a total boss in your Kranvagn, only exposing your turret, which is the strong point of this vehicle. You might be wondering how Tankart just managed to ricochet 1,500 damage from a very dangerous tier 10 tank destroyer in the form of the Gorilla with just such impunity. And he, gosh, sets him on fire there, burns up 1,412 damage, totally destroying that Gorilla, outplaying him completely by catching his tracks again after he reloaded, and then burning him up. So Tankart so far has balanced 3,890 damage all pretty much off the turret of this tank. And that's because that is what the speciality of this vehicle is. Even when you're not using any of the gun depression of this vehicle, we are talking about 325 to 400 millimeters of turret armor. And when you are using your gun depression on this tank, we are talking about 400 to 550 millimeters of turret armor. That's just simply ridiculous. That means that when you're not angling this turret, some parts of it will bounce a heat round from a Jagdpanzer E100 pretty much about half of the time. And when you are angling this turret, you are pretty much always going to be bouncing a Jagdpanzer E100 heat shell, which has, I believe, the highest penetration of any premium round in the game. I think it's even got more penetration than, for example, the AP rounds on a T92, although how long those will last for, we're not sure if the sandbox is anything to go by. And that is what the Kranvagn is all about. Get yourself into a position like this, only expose your turret armor, and then pick apart your opponents, and then it doesn't really matter if you've got the longest reload time of any of these auto-loading heavy tanks. It doesn't matter if it takes you longer to fire out your magazine. It doesn't matter if you've got the lowest penetration of all of them, as long as you can just keep the shells flying in and not taking any damage, then this thing is just a beast. And of course it has the mobility, at least more than the T57 Heavy, to be able to get into position. We can see also the Object 140 bounces off the upper plate of this tank, and that's because the upper plate armor is very well angled and also very strong indeed, until you angle it. If you angle it like that, it becomes a bit like an IS-7 beak, where if they have the side of the front of your armor, it does become very weak indeed. And so that means that Kranvagn wants to not angle its armor at all towards its opponents, but then its lower plate becomes quite weak. As we can see, the M46 Patton, a lower tiered medium, easily able to get through the lower plate of the Kranvagn. And so that is your number one tip to taking this tank out. If you can't get its side armor, which is 70 millimeters thick, and you can't overmatch, unlike you can on the Emil, you want to be just putting rounds into the lower plate of this tank, or if you can't manage to hit the lower plate, just fire high explosive rounds, hopefully at the side of the vehicle, and try and splash over it to take off smaller amounts of damage. But you're not really going to be taking this tank out that quickly if you do that, because the 2,000 hit points on the vehicle, while it's not as much as the AMX 50B or the T57 Heavy, enables the tank to last long enough to be able to, I guess, get those longer reload magazines in and into its opponents. There were a couple of key moments in this replay for me. Number one, when Tankart just allowed the gorilla to shoot at his turret. That is how much confidence he has, and he should have, in the turret of the Kranvagn. He ricocheted that shell, set off the gorilla on probably about a 14-second reload, and then took out an IS-7. I can't think of any other heavy tanks apart from possibly the IS-7 where I would have that much confidence to let a tier 10 tank destroyer such as the Gorilla 15 shoot at my turret. And the key difference between this vehicle and an IS-7 is that no one's really afraid of taking shots from an IS-7. Sure, the 490 damage is going to be unwelcome, but then he's on quite a long reload, and it's certainly not the most accurate vehicle with a very good aim time. The Kranvagn, on the other hand, will deal a subsequent 1,200 damage to you, unlike the IS-7 could, dishing out a full magazine of 1,600 damage within 9 seconds of the first shot. And I think that's just what's so powerful about this tank. It has that impenetrable frontal turret armor like the IS-7, but double the gun depression and a much more deadly 120mm auto-loading main armament that you will certainly have to respect. Tankart also had the mobility and the awareness to get his team out of a very dangerous situation, almost so casually, when his friends were pushing on towards the enemy base, and there were 4 people situated around his, with only a Bat Chatillon who was on 125 hit points to try and defend against them. By getting back, get into position, and dispatching them one by one, he certainly secured this game if his friends had not got into the cap circle very quickly. So Tankart nailed his ace tanker in the Kranvagn here, also a Radley Walters medal for the 9 kills that he picked up, a steel wool medal for ricocheting nearly 5,000 damage from the enemy team, and unsurprisingly a high caliber 8 1,562 damage dealt, and this was very much within early days of the Kranvagn's release. What a fantastic game, and I did take a look on what replays, and it's still certainly one of the best in the brand new Swedish tier 10 heavy tank. Tankart also only had to fire a couple of heat rounds when he ran out of APCR ammunition in this tank, so he makes a cool 57,000 credits profit. Tankart, congratulations to you on this mammoth game in the Kranvagn. It really makes me want to pick this tank up, but I'm not rushing it. I'm very happy grinding my way through the Emil at the moment. I'm very nearly at the Emil too, but you've certainly given me something to look forward to, and thank you so much for uploading this on What Replays for the community to enjoy, and hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider giving it a like, and if you're watching this video as it's released on Sunday, it's time for another Tech Tree Showcase live on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. This time I will be playing in the French heavies as Oscar requested, and 36 people backed him up on Twitter, and when we look at Facebook, 253 people voted for Matthias' suggestion of the French heavy tank line. And if you've never seen one of my Tech Tree Showcases before, they're basically like a mini tank review from tier 1 to tier 10, playing every single tank along the way. So you can find out if it's a line that you're interested in playing yourself, which tanks to look forward to, which tanks are stinkers, or if you've already got the vehicles and you love them, maybe you can come and pick up a few tips and tricks. And a massive thank you to everyone who does come along to these Tech Tree Showcases. Sometimes we get 8,000 to 9,000 people watching at the same time. It's absolutely insane. I really appreciate your support, and it gives me so much energy. Thanks guys. And so as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.